Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating perspective on communication, silence, and strategy. We're drawing this straight from a recent text by Biblehaven. We live in this era of constant status updates and oversharing, right? Like, posting literally every detail of our lives is almost expected. But the material we're looking at today presents a totally countercultural thesis. Not every truth is meant to be spoken. In fact, oversharing can actually sabotage your goals, your healing, and your peace. Okay, let's dive into this and see exactly what these 5 guarded secrets are, according to this biblical framework.
The foundation of this entire concept rests on Proverbs 29:11. A fool vents all his feelings, but a wise man holds them back. This ancient wisdom starkly contrasts with our modern culture. We're constantly told that venting is healthy, right? That transparency is always the best policy. Well, according to the text, indiscriminately opening up can actually be foolish. It really sets the stage for a much more strategic, protective approach to the things we value most.
Number 1, the danger of oversharing. Guard your next move. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it frames vulnerability. When a new vision or plan is given to you, it's not meant for public discussion. It's meant for private preparation. Interestingly, this framework treats this dynamic as spiritual warfare. It defines this as a situation where your spoken words can actually become open doors. Adversarial forces, they listen for clues and study your patterns. When you speak your plans too soon, you're inviting opinions, doubt, and interference from the completely wrong ears. You're essentially giving away the blueprint before the foundation is even poured. Moving right along to Section 2, guarding visions and revelations. Keep your visions private. Expanding from just protecting future moves, the text argues we also need to guard our deep personal revelations. Some things are meant purely for revelation, not conversation. To really illustrate this, let's look at the famous biblical anecdote of Joseph. Joseph had this massive dream, a huge vision for his future. But the very moment he shared it, his brothers turned against him. There's a brilliant psychological insight here from the source. They didn't turn on him because he did anything wrong. They turned on him because his calling exposed their comfort. Some people will celebrate you right up until your destiny highlights their stagnation. Joseph's story illustrates that some visions simply grow best in total silence. So how exactly should you handle a new vision or calling? The source gives us 3 punchy staccato directives. Number 1, prepare, don't announce. Number 2, obey, don't explain. And number 3, pray deeply and move quietly. You don't need validation for something you already know is absolutely true. When the time is right, your results are going to preach much louder than your words ever could. Deep personal revelations act as a sacred currency. Think about that for a second. Actually, scratch that. Think about it like this. You wouldn't spend your hard-earned money on something worthless. So why spend your sacred currency in an environment that totally lacks discernment? If you release these internal whispers or warnings way too early, the revelation actually loses its purity, just because it's exposed to the wrong atmosphere. Now, this contrasts Joseph's mistake with Mary's wisdom. When Mary received massive, completely life-altering news, Luke 2:19 says she didn't run around trying to prove it to everybody. Instead, she kept these things and pondered them in her heart. These divine instructions are like seeds. If you dig a seed up too early just to show everyone it's there, it's never going to grow. Section 3, the power of secret sacrifices, the incredible power of silence. And this brilliantly illustrates a direct challenge to our society's obsession with showing off. We live in an era where, honestly, if a good deed isn't posted online, people act like it didn't even happen. But Matthew 6:3 says, "Do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing." It's the ultimate call to do the right thing without seeking a single ounce of public attention. Whether it's fasting, giving to charity, or simply helping out a neighbor, God doesn't need you to prove your goodness to the internet on TikTok or Instagram. There's a really stark contrast being made here. Heaven's approval versus human applause. When you brag about your obedience or, just subtly slip your good deeds in a casual conversation, hoping someone at work or at a party notices, you make the sacrifice all about you. The text argues that the moment you trade sincerity for recognition, you're simultaneously trading a lasting spiritual reward for a super temporary earthly reputation. Keep those sacrifices hidden so the results cannot be ignored.
All right, Section 4, protecting your unhealed wounds. Guard them while you heal.
Opening up to the wrong listeners while you're still hurting carries a very real emotional risk. So the crucial point is, there is a massive and vital difference between a testimony and a wound. A testimony is a completed victory. It's what you share after the healing has completely taken place. A wound, however, is pain that's still being processed, and that needs to be protected. Exposing pain too early just gives the wrong people ammunition. Because the harsh reality is, not everyone who listens actually cares. Some people are literally just collecting information. Proverbs 4:23 puts it perfectly. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. This framework treats your vulnerability as absolute holy ground. You shouldn't let just anyone stand on it. You need to share your battles only with those who are truly equipped and anointed to handle them, not just whoever happens to be around and available to listen. Look at Jesus' own strategic transparency. Even Jesus didn't reveal everything to everyone. The text breaks down his varying degrees of access. He had the massive crowds, the 12 disciples, and then a very tight inner circle. And there were still things only he and the Father shared. It's a really powerful reminder that setting boundaries around your heart and your healing isn't selfish. It's a modeled spiritual practice. And that brings us to number 5, the fragility of new blessings. Cover the fresh oil. Public praise can so easily invite private envy and jealousy. The hard truth is, not everyone celebrating with you is actually happy for you. This concept is anchored with the story of the wise men. After they found the infant Jesus, they were warned by an angel not to go back and tell King Herod where the child was. Why? Because Herod viewed the child as a massive threat. Some blessings are simply too new and too fragile to survive public exposure. If you expose a brand new blessing to a jealous audience, things might suddenly get much, much harder. Let's move to and see how this builds into a really beautiful metaphor. God's favor is like fresh oil. It must be covered until it's ready to pour. True favor doesn't need a loud announcement. It naturally reveals itself over time. The advice here is to celebrate in quiet gratitude rather than in public display, letting your peace be the actual proof of your blessing, rather than, another social media post. As we wrap up, the overarching goal of guarding these 5 secrets isn't about being overly paranoid or enforcing some punishing silence. It's entirely about protection and stewardship. Your dreams, your revelations, your sacrifices, your healing, and your blessings, they're sacred assignments. When you finally learn to protect what is holy, you actually create the space for it to safely multiply. We're ending today with this highly provocative question straight from the source. Before you share your next big dream, before you post about a new blessing, or even vent about an unhealed wound, you have to ask yourself, is this for people's ears or for God's glory? It really challenges all of us to radically rethink our sharing habits. Sometimes the absolute most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it gave you some powerful new frameworks for your own life. Keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you next time.